Hello, everyone. Welcome to Latinas in Cyber. This is our first Cyber C-Suite series, La Jefa. I'm very excited and I have a great panel. So, today we're going to talk about AI, which, shocker, nobody's talking about AI. No, just kidding. Everybody's talking about AI. I have gone to so many webinars, but what I love about this is that we're all having the conversation. So, let's do this. Before we get into the discussion, I am going to go ahead and introduce our panel. And I'm very excited because this panel is full of talented women, which we love. So let's start by introducing Yovana Rosales. Say hi. Okay, so Yovana is a true inspiration. Let me just say, she is the host of Making Leader Moves podcast. So if you haven't seen it, go follow it. The Leader Moves podcast, which brings powerhouse Latinas together to discuss the challenges of our communities and what our communities are facing and the moves they took to prioritize joy in their lives. Her work as a speaker and community builder focuses on AI, being Latin, entrepreneurship, and wellness. She has a workshop out now where she visits corporations, small businesses, and co working spaces where she acknowledges burnout and show folks how to leverage AI to not only prevent burnout, but to scale their business, self care, and personal lives. So keep an eye out because Giovanna, soon she's going to drop her course, How to Leverage AI as a Latin Entrepreneur. So this is in November that is coming out. So keep an eye on that. Hello, everyone. See, everyone is already joining in. I want to also introduce Soribel Feliz. Hi, Soribel. We are so excited because Soribel is a former U.S. diplomat with over 10 years of experience at the State Department. An expert in her field, Soribel is currently the Senior AI and Tech Policy Advisor for Senator Bill Cassidy, who is a ranking member of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. She is also an American Association for the Advancement of Science Fellow with a focus on artificial intelligence. Congratulations,
Thank
sorry,
you.
Belle, on that, on your fellowship. And lastly, she is the founder and CEO of Responsible AI. So check her out. Ooh, yes, this is getting hot. And then our last panelist, Diana Kelley. All right. Diana Kelley is the Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, for Protect AI. She also serves on the boards of WISES, the Executive Women's Forum, InfoSec World, Cyber Future Foundation, Tech Target Security Editorial, and DevNet AI ML. She is a sought after keynote speaker, the host of Bright Talks, the Security Balancing Act, co-author of the books Practical Cybersecurity Architecture and Cryptographic Libraries for Developers. Also an instructor for LinkedIn's learning class on security in AI and ML. So, hey, all of you, you can sign up. And she also has been a lecturer at Boston College Master's Program in Cybersecurity, a 2023 Global Cybersecurity Hall of Fame honoree, the EWF 2020 Executive of the Year, and an EWF Conference Share 2021 to now present, an SC Media Power Player, and one of Cybersecurity Ventures' 100 Fascinating Females Fighting Cybercrime. Let me take a breather. Hold on. Wow. That's impressive. I'm just going to say that I am inspired by all of you, and I can only hope to follow all of your footsteps. So that's amazing. Let me take a breather here. I know everybody's joining in, everybody's saying hi. I'm super excited that everyone is here, everybody's joining. So together, the panel and I, we will be discussing AI. But before I do that, I do want to mention a special mention to Krista Kasiki. She is our Latinas in Cyber Director of Communication, and she's also the Director of Operations at Alpha Rich. So thank you for everything you do and for putting this together, Krista. And lastly, I am your host, Fifi, And I am a security GRC analyst for LiveRamp. Shout out to LiveRamp, I love them. I am also a Latinas in Cyber co-founder, and I am a doctoral student at Colorado Tech, where I focus on artificial intelligence research. Now let's get started. That was a mouthful. That was a lot. So we have an expert panel. I'm very excited to be able to bring this discussion to you. AI has taken over. Not only before it was fantasy, before it was the plot of a movie, of a book. Now it's real and it's being integrated in society. So let me start with the first question. And I'm going to start with Yovana. And you can all pitch in and converse and talk about this. How are organizations currently utilizing generative AI technologies in the workplace? And what benefits do we see from its integration?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hi, Fifi. Excited to be here. Happy to be here. I come from a entrepreneurial perspective, so mine might be a little different than the other panelists that we have here. And so for me, I use it a lot for content creation. And it's very beneficial to me because I suffer from a chronic illness, which leaves me between 2 to 3 days in bed, leaves me immobile, don't want to work, don't want to get up, can't even mentally and or physically handle it. So AI has helped me be able to not only come up with content that sounds like me, because I also, and will talk definitely later back into this, but like how to have it brand, like how to have my brand sound like me, market like me. I've been able to train AI to do that. But yeah, just like having a chronic illness and having my own company takes up a lot. So being able to leverage AI in that and help keep stresses down and to a bare minimum helps me out a lot.
Perfect. What do you think, Soribel?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really, really happy to be here. So, organizations are using generative AI for everything, literally everything. Like Yovana said, they're using it to generate content. They're using it to automate a lot of tasks and a lot of jobs, unfortunately. They're using it for data analysis. They're using it to help their employees, the middle performing employees become top performers. They're using it to kind of, cut down on the time spent on, like very boring tasks, boring parts of the job, in allowing employees to have more time for creative, creative, aspects of their jobs, more time for interaction with other employees, so that there can be more creativity. So they're using it to increase creativity and increase productivity,
Mm-hmm.
um, in for data analysis, which can actually help them bring more business or even deliver more value to their existing customers, and even find new customers. So they're doing it. They're using it. They're using it a lot, and they don't want to come out and say we're automating jobs, because that doesn't sound
Mm,
good. But they're doing it. They're doing it. I know they are.
true. What about your thoughts on this, Diana?
Yeah, one of the interesting things about machine learning is that it's been with us for well over a decade, and it's been in heavy use in many organizations already, especially if you look at things like financial services. If you have a 401k, you might have signed up for something called a robo advisor years ago. And that's an algorithm, and that algorithm is buying and selling based on the learning and the tuning overall. So we've had this around for a long time to help us with pattern matching, discovering predictability. What's the weather going to be tomorrow, for example? And then in November of 2022, it kind of exploded in generative AI, and companies started going, "Wow, we can use this." So it's kind of interesting to see that there, even though machine learning does power generative AI, looking at things like the chatbots, it's really changed organizations'
Mm-hmm.
relationships to the technology, and they're using it in just a number of fascinating ways. Everything from the CEO trying to figure out, how do I write this email that letting people go, all the way to like in pharma and biotech, doing things like there's actually something called generative biology, which I just learned from a guest on our MLSec podcast a couple of weeks ago, where they're actually saying, well, can we generate things forward? Can we start to see, what this vaccine might do, or what this virus might do? What would, that look like? Not a computer virus, but an actual human virus. So it's really, these generative tools are really wonderful for exactly what we've been talking about, generating ideas, being able to write similarly to you, and then you go in and you edit it and you change it. So these are some of these great use cases that organizations are finding, and creativity, sometimes brainstorming. These tools are really useful for that.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said, Diana. Um, Tools like ChatGPT are being used to kind of break the barriers of writer's block. It helps you a lot with getting not only information, performing your research at a more rapid pace than it would take you days, weeks, months to even do a research. And it also helps with, if you have writer's block and you don't know what else to write, it can give you a recommendation. So that's pretty. I think that's very beneficial. Also, what Yovana was talking about in regards to health. Yes, the AI is doing a lot for health. I know right now they're working on how to use AI to give rapid diagnosis for people with autoimmune disorders, because it usually takes from 5 to 7 years to get a diagnosis. And now you imagine, instead of waiting 7 to 10 years, the agony, you don't know what you have. And then suddenly now we have a machine that is going to tell you, hey, in 2 years, maybe you'll get a rapid response. That's actually revolutionary, and it's a big change. And then also, Soribel, you were hitting also on how we're using it for customer service. We also using it for education. We're using for content creation. I mean, there is so much out there. I do believe that it's going to get even better, and of course, there's going to be a point where it's going to be integrated into probably every single industry and in their workflows. So let's go ahead and move on to the next question. What are the primary privacy concerns associated with the use of AI in the workplace, and how can organizations address them effectively? You can go ahead and start, Diana.
Okay. Well, with the LLMs, the privacy concerns are very simple. Somebody puts into the LLM, a public LLM, something that is sensitive or proprietary or confidential to the organization. That LLM, although many of them say, well, they're not getting trained on the new data that's coming in, the LLM records what was entered into it, and then at an inopportune time, or not, it's always going to be inopportune if it's supposed to be privacy, but it spits it back out. So there's been an example of this already, where some Samsung engineers were trying to figure out how to, I think they were writing some tech documents, but they put information that was proprietary into the LLM, and one of their competitors actually ended up pulling it back out of the LLM. No harm was intended. It was just, they happened to, as they were interacting with the LLM, they got this information back out. So making sure that what we put into the LLM is private and confidential, that the LLM doesn't then leak it back out. So being careful with using things that are on-prem or that we have control over, not some of these public solutions. And that can be tricky, because those CEOs that are writing emails about a merger coming up, perhaps, or helping with a press release on a merger, obviously that's highly sensitive information. So there's going to be some training with our users. Some of the other concerns are that LLMs and machine learning in general really need a lot of data. So data is the fuel. Data is how you train these systems. Making sure that data has been anonymized properly. And it's trickier than it may sound, because you may think like, oh, well, I've decoupled it from any identifying information. But researchers have done things like, for example, membership inference by querying the API of a model with the right prompts, able to extract information out of it. In one case, it was around healthcare information, just by putting in, I think it was the name and the day related to a procedure. They were able to figure out what procedure that person had. That was not intended to be leaked information. It was just as the researchers were poking at this model, they found out that they were able to do that. So we have to be really cautious, not just with what we put into the LLM, i.e. if it's sensitive, that may then get out to our competitors, but also that the data that we train it on, making sure that it has been fully vetted and tested, especially when the model is an inference, to ensure that you can't have a leakage or extraction of the training data itself.
That's true. And I think that's why enforcing policies is very important when using AI. I did hear also stories about how certain, because we use, of course, AI for coding as well. The engineers will use it, and they also had inserted certain code that was intellectual property, and it was leaked as well. So yeah, we have to be very careful with this, and we need to have a good training program in place as well. What's your thoughts on this, Soribel?
Yeah, so I agree with what Diana said, and looking at it from a privacy professional perspective, LLMs can be very hungry and thirsty for data. They want everything, and sometimes they can collect unnecessary data, things that they don't need, and they don't inform users that they're taking that certain data or how they're using that data. And so it's this lack of transparency in how they use our data and what they do with that data and where that data is stored. So those are my main privacy concerns. I'm sure there are more. But I'm not trying to provide any solutions right now. That wasn't in the question, but we need to have some kind of consent procedures and more transparent ways to tell people how their data is being used and what data is being collected from them.
True. Yeah, and accountability. Yovana, what is your take on this particular question?
Sure. Well, for me, I use it for content creation, but when it comes to doing data analysis and competitive research or research analysis, I don't put it because I don't have the consent from my clients. So when it's my business and my content for Yovana's business, I'll use it. But when it comes to doing research with consumers or even with my avatar, if you will, I never throw that in any type of LM machine because I never got their consent. And one thing is to check a box to subscribe to my newsletter. Another thing is I'm using all your data and running it through a public form. The second thing I would say that we really need to take note is the inclusivity and the bias that don't get much hearsay or presence when it comes to data. They are data hungry driven machines. However, that data is skewed, it is biased. We need to really, really sit down and look at the numbers. Who is really using this type of tool? Who has access to this type of tool? What is the difference between of having a ChatGPT free version compared to a $20 a month? Because now we're looking at output being very, very different. And again, accessibility, who has the privilege to pay $20 a month versus someone who is only relying on the 3.5 free version. So being able to be aware of not only who are feeding these machines, but also who is lack of being present when it comes to feeding these machines needs to be addressed as well.
True. Yeah. And we're actually going to touch on that in the next question. But actually, let's open the conversation. I wanted to talk about the concern of, let's say we have an AI tool that can monitor your voice, can monitor, can record you. I feel that I'm concerned about the surveillance part of it because I need to look out for the privacy of my employees. What about if this is monitoring it? So we need to make sure that we have certain controls in place, and we need to make sure that we understand this tool that we're using. Do you, any of you have suggestions on how we can do something like this where we can actually make sure we're careful with this type of tools?
I think it's starting here, having these conversations within our own communities. Like, shout out to Latinas in Cyber getting this together and just making it aware. But I think also letting people who aren't in the arena or in the space know, like creating educational programs within the community, start bringing awareness within the community. And it doesn't have to be anything big. I mean, it can start with simple going to your library, seeing what type of resources and tools they have there, what type of educational programs can start there. That's how I've started. I was looking for something, I didn't find it. I mean, I ended up becoming certified and like now I'm doing the work, but it all started with curiosity. And so now bringing that awareness to a very predominantly Latino community, I think is just step one.
Yeah, I would. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Diana.
I would add to that we should be threat modeling our AI and ML the way that we threat model the other tools and solutions that we bring technologically into our organizations. Because, as you just mentioned, if this tool might be able to overhear people, right? And this was a big concern for a while with televisions, because televisions are basically computers with mics and cameras on them. And, how do we know that these are safe? And some companies have policies where it actually have to turn the power off to the system. So thinking through the threat model related to whatever AI or ML tool that you're using, and then ensuring that you have the proper controls in place before you adopt these solutions at the organization, I think is a really big step forward in making sure we're using these systems responsibly.
Yes, that's true. And Victoria Lynn from Orshad, she says end user education is very important, and I do agree. I also believe that each organization should have a group or a committee dedicated to AI, where you have to, they make decisions on if this tool is appropriate to use, to add conditions. This is the conditions that into what, how you can use this tool. And we have to have accountability as well. So I think that will work. And because when you have this type of groups, you're able to see which assess the tool that is being requested, but also you want to look at the terms and conditions. You want to use the use of that tool. You want to see the security posture of this company that it has created. So yeah, I think that we should have that in place as well. I will go ahead and then jump to the next question. I know this question is a hot topic right now and is in regards to bias. So how can we ensure diversity and inclusivity in AI development teams to reduce the risk of bias in AI systems? We can open the conversation.
So I think one of the most important things to address bias in AI and ML is to make sure that the teams that are working on them are diverse themselves, and diverse in a number of different dimensions. Their backgrounds, their education, their specialties. All of these things can come into play, because the thing about bias is it's unconscious. So we don't know where we're biased. And that's why being in a larger, diverse group, as you're thinking about what are we going to adopt, how are we going to use it, who's going to access it, what would the controls be to protect people, from privacy leaks, for example, getting these different viewpoints, having legal weigh in and maybe HR, that can go a really long way to making sure that we're taking a better look at the bias. Because if you have one or two people that think very similarly, they may have unconscious bias. It's not no harm, no foul. Nobody's trying to do anything wrong, but that unconscious bias could then impact how that system is developed and deployed. Another thing around bias is being very careful with the data that we're training these systems on, and making sure that we're not introducing bias without realizing it, because models will drift towards, there's something called model drift, and they'll drift toward bias and have degradation. So sometimes you need to go and retune a model if the bias has kind of gotten out of whack. One example of bias in a system was an applicant tracking vetting tool that started to really focus positively on people's resumes that if their name was Jared and they had played lacrosse. So that's sort of, it's like it's not, when we think of bias, I think we always think of something, very intentional, that may be about educational background or geographic location or even race. But you can have bias like that. Just Jarrett's that played lacrosse. How did the system start to drift that way? Or when you're training the machine learning models, making sure that they're not starting to in a biased way, classify images. So one example on an image database repository, in automatic classification, women were being in medical environments were being classified as nurses, men were being classified as doctors, for example. So stepping in and making sure that the data that you're training the systems on is the right and appropriate data and not biased data. And then also being sure that as that training is occurring, that you're not seeing drift towards bias within the model itself.
Yes. What do you think, Yovana?
I agree. And I definitely agree hiring diversity and inclusivity, but that starts from the beginning. Like that starts in community, that starts in education. And so creating programs within your community to just bring exposure to this type of thing. Because as we know within stats, whether it's Latinas in cyber, Latinas in tech, it's low. And so, having these children be exposed to like this cool technology, the fact that they can have access to it, the fact that they can learn. So starting to, like I said, put in those, even if it's just half a day, like Chicago just had 2 weeks ago, a half day, I think it was called Get Explore, and it had to do with STEM and tech. And it was the different universities that have different types of programs, whether you're a full-time student or student just for the summer, just to be part of that program. And so just creating awareness, and I think creating access to these programs so students can make it, and maybe not so much have to worry about the financial means of it. I saw a lot of stipends, a lot of scholarships, or a lot of non-for-profits making these courses a reality. I think that's where it starts.
Yes, and Soribel and I had like a nice private chat where we were discussing bias, and I loved actually her view on it. If you can share it, Soribel.
Which view?
A view
I
on
remember we said
yeah,
so
so
many.
in bias, in how we have bias in AI systems, and the engineers who actually are working on this.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I can't stress this enough. What Diana said. We need multiple disciplines uh,
Mhm.
when it comes to AI. There's a lot of arrogance sometimes in technologists. They kind of dismiss people that don't have technical backgrounds. Oh, you won't get it. This is too technical for you. Well, no, no, we need to make sure that we have all kinds of people there with all kinds of backgrounds and education levels, and not just people who are highly educated, but we need people who are not so highly educated, people who only have some college or who only have a high school diploma. Because think about it like this: everyone will be affected by AI. Everyone is subject to automated decision making. So why should only people who look a certain way or went to a certain school or live in a certain part of the country have a say in this huge technology that's affecting everyone? It doesn't make sense, and it actually exposes companies to reputational damage, to backlash. So I really want to stress the diversity of backgrounds. I also want to stress diversity of age, generational
Mhm.
diversity, because we tend to think that, oh, technology is a young person's game. I'm
Mm.
too old. I'm already 50. I just need to you know, put my head down and keep working. But I think that's terrible. That's a terrible thing. That's terrible. I think we can't just say, oh wait, okay, boomer. Like we need to include everyone. We need to include because and I don't think you don't want your mom or your dad or your aunt to be dismissed by someone because she doesn't know how to do this or that. So it's the same like at work. Don't dismiss the older workers because they've seen it before. They've seen technology coming into the workplaces before. And, it's just, we need to embrace generational diversity.
Mhm.
It's not just racial and gender diversity, even though that's very important. But I don't think having the rainbow full of Harvard and Stanford educated PhDs will make a difference. Um, yeah, so I'll stop there. But yeah, we need diversity.
No, no, you're completely right, and I think that all of us can keep talking about that, because it is true. It starts from recruitment. It starts from understanding that we have to have a QA process for the data that we use to train these models, to also having a training program for the employees that are working on these training models. So there is a lot to think about. But when you were talking about age, that really hit a point, because when I actually talk about entry level cybersecurity, um, I always talk about that. I have bosses, managers who are younger than me, that I learned so much from them. I never think of their age. I just learned so much. And I also have managers and coworkers that are older than me, and I learned so much from them too. It's like, for me, it's a win-win situation. I love it. So everything does go back to AI and how this ties in, because at the end, the users of AI is every gender, every profession, every race. Like, everyone is going to be using AI. So we do have to take that into account. And I think that it was Yovana who brought a good point in regards to scholarships. I think giving scholarships and having people from diverse backgrounds join the ML or the tech world will help tremendously into building these AI systems. So then our next question, we're going to talk about how can organizations strike a balance between leveraging AI for productivity gains while ensuring the protection of sensitive employee and customer data. Anyone can start. Open floor.
Well, one of the ways that companies are especially, when you look at companies that have very highly sensitive data, it's highly regulated, pharma, financial services, for example, they're not using the publicly available LLMs. What they're using is they're either creating their own baby LLMs or they're using a private version. And this is very, very common in machine learning itself, where you'll find that they're either they download the models and train them on premise or in their own private cloud. So they take an open source model from like Hugging Face, for example, but then they run it on prem or in their closed cloud environment, and they train it with their own data. So they may use a public model, but they're training it and managing it privately. So that's one of the ways that companies are able to actually wrap a little bit more security around it, which sort of surprised me when I first saw that, because I have gotten so over into the cloud. I started my career way, way back, and it was everything. It was kind of pre-internet, and everything was very on-prem, and even the internet was a little, as we hooked up, it was a little scary. So the cloud initially for me was kind of a tough thing to get my head around from a risk perspective, but now I'm all in on cloud, as most companies are. So it was kind of interesting to see that this is one place where there's still a little bit of either holding it back on prem or in your own virtual private cloud, rather than going the full SaaS model. So I know a lot of people are using the SaaS based LLMs, but there's a lot of analytics, especially for very proprietary actions, that are still being done in private, either on prem or virtual private cloud.
True. What do you think, Soribel?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it brings me back to the book that I read. It's called "The Battle for Your Brain" by Nita Farahani, and she's a neuroscientist, neuro scientist. She studies the brain. And she was talking about like how employers are now collecting more and more and more data than ever from employees in terms of like measuring their state of mind, right? So for example, train conductors or truckers, people who operate heavy machinery, uh, there's like they have to wear some sensors where it shows it shows how they're feeling, if they're tired, if they're sleepy, and it kind of like wakes them up, or it alerts their employer that this person is at risk of like falling asleep, which is great. That's great technology, but it's also dangerous because like how do you feel about having someone like monitor your every emotion, your feelings all the time? That's very, very invasive. So it's a delicate balance. Definitely, we want to be productive. We want to, maximize our potential when at work, but we also have to be careful that we are not letting employers like take too much and have too much of that. So that's how I interpret that question.
Yeah.
And we definitely don't want employers to, share that data, let's say with a health insurance company, which may charge higher premiums because we have a certain health condition. So that's how I approach that question. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that that's my thought.
That's great, Soribel, because that's why I love that the three, like, the four of us have diverse backgrounds. Like, Diana, CISO, you're in the privacy, and Yovana, a business owner, and then I in GRC. That's why we can give our like different points. And yes, I mean, we do have to protect our employee data and our client data respectfully, and that's why I think that we should have access controls, or like limit access, and we have to have regular audits. And so there is so many things that we need to do in order to protect our employee data. But you're completely right. I wonder, Yovana, what is your perspective on the AI productivity?
So under notes, I literally put transparency.
Yep.
And I think whether that's corporate, entrepreneurship, just, whatever big moves are being made or moves in general, just send the policy notice to your employees, to your customers, let them know about the change. Obviously, first and foremost, for legality issues, the last thing you need is a lawsuit on your hands. So just being very, very transparent on that level. And sometimes restricting access is a good thing. I think we tend to always, again, right, with these machines, we're always like, oh, let's feed, feed, feed. But sometimes stepping back, taking that pause, really breathing, really analyzing, really seeing what are the objectives for you to be putting that into the machine. Is it really necessary? Do you need to give it that much access? Can you withhold? Can you restrict? Might be the better option for you in the long run. It may bring back the tedious goals that we were talking about earlier that we don't want to do, but sometimes that will save us millions in our business, if not the corporation that we're working for. So just bring it down. Transparency.
Oh yes, and now that you're talking about that, I I, I want to say, and I want to actually ask you, Diana, if you have a feedback on this. But there is a lot of us who are technical, and then there's others who are non-technical. And what can you advise us in order, because you have worked in ABM and you have worked in AI for a while. So what can you advise us in regards to how can we learn deeper for those that are non-technical, that still don't want to be engineers, but we do need to comprehend certain parts in order to make better decisions when it comes to creating policies, frameworks?
Yeah, I think that, and that's such a wonderful question, because I think everybody's sort of, how do I get started, and how do I, move forward? And unfortunately, the name is escaping me right now, but the author is Yuval Harari, and he wrote a book where he was looking sort of at the future and what that might look like, and he has this very thoughtful approach to how AI can impact us, and he's looking at the societal aspects, one thing that I think is really powerful in the AI and ML space is the trust issues that we have with systems, because we tend to trust what comes out of a computer. And what I mean by that, if you're going, I don't trust everything the computer says. Well, you may be thinking if you're just looking at a feed on a social media, but if I asked you to multiply two 10-digit numbers together right now, who here is going to take out a piece of paper and a pencil and do that manually?
Not me.
Not me, for sure. We're mostly gonna use a calculator, and when that calculator gives us an answer, are we then gonna go, let me just get out my pen and paper and calculate this? Again, not necessarily. So the reason that I love this book that Harari wrote is that he starts thinking about what does it mean if we are asking these systems to do things like judicial sentencing. How long should this person's been found guilty of a crime? How long should they go to jail? What kind of risk are they? Because there's an opportunity for extreme bias in that kind of a use case. So how would that impact society and on the individual who's being sentenced, obviously? Some other cases of, one thing he brings up in the book is he's talking about, what if we use these systems to matchmake? And then suddenly, the system says we're a good fit with this other person. We might not feel that fit with the other person, but the system said we are, so you move forward. A lot of just different explorations of how the application of AI and ML could play out that isn't as deeply technical. I mean, obviously, he's talking about things that are very viable and that have been, are actually out there, but he's not talking from that deep technical point of, what happens if you don't train with complete data and you get, an underfit model, which is getting into the deeper tech. I also think that there is a baseline of understanding the core of how this technology works and how things can go wrong or get better. I apologize. Those are my cats. You can hear that.
Exactly.
I apologize to everybody. But how these systems, how the top level basics. You don't have to be a deep AI ML engineer, but to just get some of the basics of how these systems work, I think can be really helpful. And actually, that class I have on LinkedIn Learning just shows the core ways that these systems can go wrong. You can be not very technical and appreciate things like, when you have a failed reinforcement learning, for example, because that one connects to something that's pretty easy for us to understand. I use the example of a dog that was saving a child from the river. The first time the dog really saved the child and got a lot of rewards. By the third time, it's reward hacking that I'm talking about. By the third time, the dog was pushing the child into the river so they get their reward, right? This is the kind of thing that a system, right, that is just designed to get the reward then is going to just seek that reward. And perhaps it's not going to, so you have to be very careful about how you train it and ensure that it's not going to go for the reward by pushing a child in, the equivalent. In an actual machine, an actual AI simulation example was with sim human beings. And this is a simulation, but the simulated human beings realized that they could get a lot of energy by eating their simulated children, for example. So these are things where you can start to understand a little bit about how the technology goes wrong without having to become a PhD like you in AI and ML itself.
Thank you so much for that insight, because I know a lot of us were asking ourselves that question. One of the Latinas in Cyber in the chat, they asked for Diana's link training from LinkedIn. So I'll send it out so you guys can look at it. I am gonna sign up for it myself. So we will be doing it together. And also let me just say, Diana, do you think that the book that you were talking about is called Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind?
It's the one that Yuval Harari wrote right after that one. Sapiens is also a great book. Thank you for looking that up. But yeah, it's his book right after, and I don't know why, but my brain just is not coming up with it.
Oh, that's good. That's a little closer, so we can actually go ahead and find it. Okay, so then now, thank you for that, Diana. I am going to the next question. How can governments involve a diverse range of stakeholders, including industry experts, academia, civil society, and affected communities in the process of shaping AI regulations? What do you think, Yovana?
I think it goes back to what Soribel was talking about, just not hiring the experts, not hiring the Stanfords, the Yales. Like it's time to hire within the community and it's time to hire within different age brackets as well as within different experiences. Like I know my experience is going to be very different than the three of you that are on this panel. It's very different as well than some of the listeners and viewers that are here. And it doesn't mean that it's better or worse. It's just a different point of view. It's a different avenue. My journey was very different than everyone else's. And there's always key takeaways and there's always lessons to be learned through anyone's story or through anyone's journey, anyone's experience. And so I think not shunning those who whether didn't have the privilege or just couldn't get in because of how competitive certain schools were doesn't lack us needing to know their knowledge to be able to make AI accessible on any and every level.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's what brings me to whenever we start talking about regulating AI, which we heard. I think it was back in September. The big tech leaders got together and they had a private meeting and they discussed. And they kind of say yes, let's let the government AI regulate AI. So I know, Soribel, you are in the government, so you know a little bit more. How do you think what process do you think that we're going to take in order to include all stakeholders, society and academia? What do you think we're going to do?
Yeah, and that's a great question because just yesterday I was able to attend the AI Insight Forum that Senator Schumer has been organizing with three other bipartisan senators, two Republicans, two Democrats, and I thought that was so diverse and representative of the American public, and I was really proud. I was proud. Um, so we had venture capitalists, um, very famous ones. We had the head of AFL-CIO, which is one of the largest unions. We had academics. We had the former president of MIT, who is a Latino, by the way. Um, we had the president of NAACP. We had startup founders, like we had think tanks. So I think we had we had women, men and women. We had Black people. We had Latino, like at least one Latino. So I think it was very representative. It was very diverse. I thought it was great. Like, just invite all of these people to the table. Don't just talk to the technologists, because the technologists are great. They make things happen, but they're not the only ones who are going to be using these products. They're not the only ones that are affected by automated decision making. So it's just like bringing these people to the table. I think one thing that one step further would be bring in actual workers, like manual blue collar workers,
Wow.
and even like white collar workers who are not computer scientists, like your mom and pop accountant, your maybe even like restaurant manager, people from industry, like from the hospitality industry, workers that have been affected by automation, workers that have been that have become more productive by automation, by LLMs. So I think that would be a step further, and I think it will happen. I think we can bring students, actually, like like maybe high school and college students, to see how they're using that, and more youth. I would say more young people, and seeing like how they're using it, what they think. I think that's one way that we could go further.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And what is your thought here, Diana?
Yeah, I completely agree on, whatever happens, it needs to be broadly representative of many of the country, right? Our country is very diverse. It has to be broadly representative of the country. And if we have any international standards, again, broadly representative of the world. So diversity is going to be included in that, because that's how the world is. I just hope that as we create regulation, that it's very thoughtful and careful regulation. It's not, it can be very good and extremely helpful. It just has to be technically viable. So as long as they understand what can and can't be done, and hopefully useful for people moving forward. But I get hopeful that this will help us with democratization, with auditability, with transparency, and with visibility into what's going on with AI and ML. So I'm again, really, I was just grinning ear to ear to hear how broadly diverse the group was yesterday. So thank you so much for sharing that, and all the work that you're doing with the government. I mean, thank you that you're out there. And I also wanted to shout out to someone on LinkedIn did come up with the name of the book. It's Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. That's the Yovana Rosales book.
That's so great. Yes, I did write it down. Thank you so much, Diana. And yes, I think that this is regulating AI is very important, not only in-house. We also have to think of global companies and other regulations and other policies that are being created outside of our country, because we all have to align. That's very important, because we do have laws and regulations to abide. Like, you have GDPR and you have HIPAA from, here in United States, GDPR for EU. I'm sure there's a lot of other laws that we have to follow in APAC. And we also have our state, like CCPA. I know that there was one for Virginia, I think, that came out. So, we do have to align. And it's not only domestically, but also internationally. Now, this question is fun. How do you foresee the landscape of AI related privacy and security evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? And what steps can organizations take to prepare for these changes? What do you think is going to happen? I open it to you, Yovana.
Sure. I think AI is here to stay. I think it's going to be an extension of us. Again, whether you're your own business or you're in corporate. And so I just encourage everyone to, as a collective, it's going to take us to help shape the unbiasedness that we see happening now. It's going to take us to be able to educate ourselves as well as educate others. And so I just invite everyone to come in from a humble space, and let's educate ourselves. Let's educate one another. Let's not make this a rat race. Let's make sure to keep sharing resources with one another. Let's make sure to keep on sharing. Like, right, if you see this type of event happen, make sure to repost it and tag those people that who are interested in certain programs, who are interested in certain niches. And then again, just inviting you to make a difference, even locally. Start off small, start within your own community, start your own program with being able to teach the little ones AI, or even their parents. I'm actually going to start creating a course for hairstylists and makeup artists on how to use AI. So it's just always trying to think out of the box, always trying to get those regular people, again, who maybe aren't in the tech world, but let them know, like, it's not as overwhelming as people make it sound. You do not need to have to be a tech bro or have had to get a tech degree in order to use tech. Leverage it, scale your business, use that time effectively, whether it is going to get a new client or just resting. I think we don't talk about resting and bringing everyday joy into our lives. So, just leveraging it to, be very efficient with your time, but also use it to step back, pause, rest, and then maybe give yourself that time to be able to educate your community.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Soribel?
Yeah, I think AI literacy is going to be huge. And I think we need to do a better job of educating the non-educated. and when I say that, I mean non-college educated. We need to democratize AI knowledge. Um, I say, I mean, I have a theory, I have a hypothesis that AI is going to become the next hot button political issue.
Mm,
And I don't know what shape it's going to take, but it's going to be a voting issue, just like abortion, immigration, guns. I think it's going to be a hot political issue. And I think you should start forming your opinion right now. Like, for example, there are two sides of the coin when it comes to the writers' strike in Hollywood. And authors who have sued OpenAI and other companies, and they say, no, if I write a book, if I take a picture, that is my work, that is my life's work, and I have a right to it, and you can't take it. And then other people say, well, no, you can, it's just a photo, it's just a book. Like, we should democratize it for the good of the
mhm.
world. So I think people are already being, pulled to one or another side of the issue. And when we start losing jobs, and when we start seeing deep fakes, when we start seeing disinformation, like however AI is put to use, I think it's we're gonna have to take sides, and we're gonna have to form opinions. So I think AI literacy is going to be really important. We're gonna have to be educated on it, not just like college educated people having this a say over things, but all of us who are affected by automated decision making are gonna have to take a stand. Yeah.
True.
So I think just more AI literacy for sure.
Perfect. And Diana, what do you think?
Completely agree about the AI literacy and AI literacy for all, not just for the PhDs or the heavily the higher educated, but just everybody, all of us, those of us educated in the School of Hard Knocks too. For businesses, though, I think in any organization, I think one of the most important things they can do to prepare for the next 5 years is to embrace the AI and ML teams that are already in their companies right now. AI and ML have been kind of in a lot of large organizations. They've been doing their thing. Of course, they're under the policies and the controls of the larger organization, but they may not have been as part of the security and privacy programs as, for example, the DevOps folks. So if we had DevOps, we knew that we needed to bring together development and operations, but then DevSecOps, right? Because we need security to be a part of that. If you look at machine learning operations, we're seeing a similar evolution where it's time to bring security into ML ops for ML SecOps. And that's going to help companies be a lot better, creating centers of excellence, creating programs and workflows to ensure that security is woven through, and that means risk management, privacy considerations woven through the ML operations build and deployment model. Or if you're not building it, as you onboard it or start using it from other organizations, creating a threat model and a risk assessment of that system, but extending all of the security goodness that we have brought to application technology and cloud, extending that into our machine learning life cycles, which sounds simple, but it's actually not happening at some very large, very mature companies. The time really is now to create an ML SecOps aware organization. That's going to prepare you for the 3 years, 5 years down the line as regulation comes in and as this technology matures and develops.
That's exactly true. And that's why I think that companies need to invest on research.
Yes.
They need to, yes, like research is very important. We need to stay informed. We need to make sure that we hire people for data ethics, because this is going to be a huge thing, as well as lawyers that are well versed in cybersecurity, as well as AI. We are going to need this because we do need transparency, and we have to keep it, because we have to keep in mind the ethical considerations. Now, I know we have come to the end. I do have some questions from the audience that I am going to start asking. If any of you need to drop, I totally understand. So let's see. The first question is, how do you see AI helping to more aggressively mitigate attacks to critical infrastructures, both government and private? Oof. Oof. Who wants to take that one? What do you think, Diana?
Well, one of the things that we were looking at, so looking at any kind of attack, whether it's critical infrastructure or it's any other system, ML can be useful for in a couple of different ways. I mean, machine learning is at its core, it's about finding patterns, it's about finding connections, it's about maybe creating predictions. So you can do a lot of really interesting simulations like Monte Carlo Markov chain simulations with machine learning, which can help very much to understand the risk model itself. So the likelihood and the impact. So you can do things like generate multiple paths through a network and find out which one might successfully be an attacker might successfully exploit, which versus which one you've got actually control. So looking at machine learning to help guide us for the attackability or the exploitability of our systems, I think could really help us to be stronger and more prepared to protect our critical infrastructure. This can also help analysts, for example. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on with you hearing about Microsoft Copilot for Office 365, which will help you write emails or maybe finally figure out how to do, pivot tables in Excel, which you could never do before. But there's also the for security, and that there's a product that came out from IBM years ago based on Watson, which was Watson for Cyber. That was actually being trained when I was at IBM Security. And these are to help analysts to be able to do their research on security attacks, understand IOAs, indicators of attack, IOCs, indicators of compromise, understand what's really going on within their organization, and to be able to track down what an indicator of attack or compromise might mean to that specific organization. So we can use these tools to help us do what humans can't do, which is to think of the million ways that an attacker can get through. And if that's effective, that's a huge win. And also to help analysts to be able to hunt down and understand what an indicator or signal may mean within their organization so they could remediate it more quickly. So I think there's a lot of really great positive cybersecurity uses to help protect our critical infrastructure and all of our other technical systems.
Yes, I do think that. Go ahead, sorry, Bill.
Yeah, I have to drop, but it was very nice being here. Please reach out on LinkedIn if you want to chat. Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure, Soribel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's great to meet you.
Yes, I mean, in regards to that, I do believe that I imagine that now the way that we look at risk management, for example, is gonna have to change a little bit, because now we have to think of AI and how we can use this to or implement it in order to help us with the critical infrastructure. But I think it's gonna be a good enhancement. Like I said, we're gonna have to see it at every angle, because not only will we use AI tools to help us with threat and vulnerability, but we also probably in the future we are going to start using it, and we're going to handle client data there. So that's gonna be we have to, from this moment, we have to think ahead. What are we going to do? What kind of policies are we writing? Even if we write a policy right now, I know that policy is going to change regardless. There's going to be so many changes along the way, but I do think that companies, we need to start thinking that way. Write your policies, and sort of we still, regardless, we need to still update our policies every year, so we can start thinking, hey, this has changed, or we're now using these AI tools in a different way, and sort of add that kind of update into it. Another question that was asked was, are there any roles that are safer than others when it comes to being able to be replaced by automation? That makes me sad, because I know people are scared and it's going to happen regardless. However, we still need humans, like to watch over these machines, to train them. So when even if some roles will be eliminated, others are going to be created. My suggestion, and then I'm going to open it to you in the panel, my suggestion will be, keep learning. Don't be afraid No one is asking you to be a full-on coder or engineer. Like, there are so many different roles that you can train yourself for when that time comes. If unfortunately that is your job role, you're able to transition and say, well, I do know AI, and I am able to, train this model. I'm able to, maybe you become, part of data ethics, or, from compliance, GRC. So think of those roles that are going to have a huge impact on AI. But what do you think, Yovana and Diana, in regards to, the jobs that may be taken over by AI?
Yeah, there's an actual story about what you had mentioned. So when Microsoft Excel came out, 50,000 people had lost their jobs, because that's how many people used to be able to do these spreadsheets, and then Excel came. However, when Excel came, 50K jobs were lost, 200,000 were created because now they needed Excel experts, Excel designers, Excel coders, etc. So my take on this is it's not going to replace jobs, but you do need to learn how to leverage AI to be able to implement your job. So I've actually, with the course that I'm making, that's going to be launching out soon, I actually make it for though I'm making it with my mom and my dad in mind, because they now hear it because they listen to the news. And it's so cute because like my mom will screenshot and I'm like, lady, like we need to bring you up with the technology, but God bless her. She'll like screenshot what she's listening to NPR and it's like something about AI. And she's like, did you listen to this episode yet? But it's making her very aware that these changes are coming into her job. She works at a lawyer's office. With my father as well, he works in an international manufacturing company. So it's funny because like I kind of teach them and then have them reteach it to me. And so he's like, yeah, the other day I went up to my IT guy and we just started talking about AI and I could hold my own ground. Great. Like, so they are learning at their age the importance of being familiar with certain products and how they can use them safely. And I did say, like, ask your boss if you're allowed to use these type of platforms or if they have one built in their company, having to do with AI. So just teaching our folks, and letting them know how important it is, I think goes a long way. Like, for example, for me, my virtual assistant has to know AI because now I know that our objectives are not only content creation, but it's going to be in newsletter making as well as positioning for a product. So these are the three niches that I need her to work on. And because I know she's leveraging AI, I know these are the three specific tasks that she can handle. So it's just knowing who you will be hiring and knowing their level of expertise, where they can shine and where you can help build them to become better leaders in AI, because you can't also just hire an expert and expect them to know everything. Then they're way overqualified. Like, you also have to teach others. So just coming in with that open mind of it's here to stay. I need to learn it, at least the basics, and I can move on with different leadership skills or technical skills moving forward. I just need to know the basis.
What do you think, Diana?
Well, Yovana just said it perfectly. There's not a lot to add. I mean, and that's a great example too of, technology comes in, old jobs are lost, new jobs are created. And that's what we're going to see here with AI and ML. There will be new jobs. There are going to be a lot of care and feeding of the AI and ML itself and the training. So I think that Vanna's advice is just so spot on. It's get educated. Don't be afraid. Get educated and start looking at where jobs are. Look at job postings, see where jobs are going, and figure out which part of the new jobs that you're going to be interested in and you think that you can do.
True. And well, thank you. I just want to say before we leave, first to the audience, I know that some of you come from the technical background, maybe non-technical. Some of you are directors and some of you are entry level. Let me just say first, for our directors, what I ask, managers, executive leaders, please, make sure that you do, if you see someone, an employee who is struggling or who would like to be part of the innovation of AI. Like, talk to them, invite them to see what's going on, because curiosity can actually help new ideas from those employees, to give you new ideas in regards to AI. I also say to make sure that you have the conversation not only with leadership but also with everyone in the company in regards to AI, because everybody's going to have something to say. Also, for our entry levels, don't be afraid to reach out to people in different titles. I remember years ago when I would be afraid to, I would never would have actually approached Diana and asked her something. I would be so scared. But you shouldn't be afraid. Reach out to CISOs. You can reach out to directors, to managers. If you have questions or you're curious, I am sure most people are nice. Most people are good. They're human just like us. Ask them the questions whenever you're curious about these things. But have the conversation, because I know that everyone is talking about AI. Everyone has a webinar. Everyone has a panel. But it's like I said at the beginning, it is important to have it because you want to be part of it. Then it's going to come a time when now AI is everything or is everywhere. And you are going to say, I wish I would have actually had the conversation and be part of it. The example that I want to give you is, remember YouTube when we were like really young and there was like 3 people, cat videos, kids doing funny stuff. And you will tell yourself, you know what, I am going to create a YouTube video. I can do this. But you wouldn't, you didn't do it. You start doing other stuff. 5 years later, you know what, I am going to create a YouTube video, to the point that now there's so many millionaires. And now you're thinking, I should have done it. I always had the idea. I never did it. Same thing with AI. You have ideas, communicate, conversate. We're all open. I want to thank my panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I'm very excited that you came in. I have learned a lot. Do you have any final thoughts? Do you have any final thoughts, Diana?
The final thought is just, I think a summary is just don't be afraid of this. Dive in. Talk to friends, talk to people. Reach out to people that who are interested in this. Take classes. It is here to stay, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have to rule you. It's like be part of this revolution by getting educated and figure out there's so many different aspects of AI and ML. And as we've all mentioned, it's about diversity and collaboration in order to make responsible and ethical AI and ML. So there's really a space for everybody in the AI powered future.
In your closing thoughts, Yovana?
Yeah, I think it's being repeated throughout each of us differently because it's that important. It's just reach out. I created my own path in technology. I'm tech made. So I just want to let people know out there that there's different paths, there's different avenues. It's not always the people that you usually see within that industry. And please feel free to reach out. I'm, as Felicita was saying, we're all normal human beings. I'm a very normal human being. And I create community. So I'm here for any questions. I'm here to share any resources and tools that I might have. And please feel free to reach out to any one of us. And do not get intimidated. Do not get scared. Frustration is normal. Please know that. Just like anything that's brand new and can be a little intimidating and frustrating, but exciting at the same time. So feel all those feels, acknowledge them, and move forward.
Yes. Thank you so much. I will leave you with something that I always tell myself, and that's how I have been able to, be successful, and is OLA, and it's not high, it's OLA as observe, listen, and absorb. And that's going to help you a lot. Thank you so much. And you have a beautiful day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.